Excellencies, Mr. Undersecretary General, Mr. President, dear friends, dear my friend Catalin, with the amazing energy and vision which I witnessed once more. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I wanted to say I feel at home if UNA Hungary is organizing, but then when I look at this home, I feel a bit humbled, so I don't feel exactly completely at home. I think it's much better. So I had an initial speech, but part of the speech was taken by an amazing realist professor that spoke before, so I don't want to repeat myself. I would like to speak about two things. First of all, our organization, which is meant to support the United Nations, and then give you a perspective of which would be more that of a UN defender. Our organization was founded in 1946 as a federation of then 22 UNAs. UNA Hungary was not a member yet. It came 1 year later. And I think it's interesting to see why it was founded. The World Federation was founded at a moment, first of all, where the UN had just been created. There was a lot of positiveness around it. There were a lot of dreams on what the UN would be and what the world would be, and there was, of course, a lot of fear and lessons learned from the past. But civil society was not such a big thing then. So I don't think it goes without saying to think that some people would have thought it was really necessary to, on the side of the United Nations, create a civil society organization that is supposed to support it and spread the word among the people. It's not something that was 100% needed at that time when they created. But of course, when we look at what happens after, we realize how important it was, how visionary it was from Eleanor Roosevelt, Jan Masaryk, then foreign minister of Czechoslovakia, who then was a kid, died, we don't know exactly how. So they had this vision that, and I found it doing research, because we're trying to write a book on the history of the organization. They actually thought that if things go wrong in terms of support for the UN, this organization and its UNAs, like UNA Hungary, would be there to support. So I don't know if we should be happy that it concretizes, but definitely we should be happy that they had this vision, because here we are today, and it's needed more than ever. So, of course, at this point, I would like to engage everyone and to encourage you to engage with your UNAs, engage with UNA Hungary, of course, and support our work, because we are actually the largest network of civil society organizations in support of the United Nations today. And we are not the UN, so it means that we can be critical, we can be, of course, constructively critical, but we can bring some new wind or new ideas when it's needed directly from civil society in a way that is definitely constructive. I'm not saying other civil society organizations are not, of course, but the UN sees us as part of the extended family, so that's another advantage there. Now, let me give you the second thing I said, a perspective which is that of a defender of the UN, and I see that there are many students back there, and I think that if you have a phone, you realize if you have any social network or any access to the news, you should normally have heard that there is a lot of negativity against the UN, right? So, usual criticism, UN is old, needs reform, is inefficient, cannot stop wars, right? This is the main things that we generally hear. So, first of all, I would say, what about the things that have already been done and that could not have been done without the UN? So many wars stopped, so many conflicts solved, so many things. So that's answer number one. Let's not stop at the present. Let's look a little bit into the past, because the things that functioned in the past can be also in the future. So things happened, and there were great successes of the UN in the last 80 years. So the idea of just looking at the present and saying it's negative and there will never be a success again, that is a mistake. That is a human mistake, but I think it's dangerous. Of course, second idea to fight this negativity, what about before the UN? Well, before the UN, there was never something like the UN in the history of the world, ever before. So it's very simple. It has never existed an organization that includes all the countries of the world, all the different actors, all of them, except some cases that are exceptions. But to take an example, Syria continued to be a member of the UN even at the height of the Syrian civil war. You can think it's bad, it's good, but all the members are there around the table. This is the first time. It has never happened in the past. Another thing which is quite important, I heard from previous speeches as well, it is not the first time that the UN is going through problems. We heard there was an FBI, I had no idea there was an FBI office inside the UN. McCarthyism struck the UN employees, and so many other things. There's a Secretary General that died, and there are people who say different things about that death, and I know nothing about it, but I would say that, yes, that could have sparked a lot of negativity, and many other things. Scandals, Iraq, the scandal with Iraq, that was horrible for the UN, and the UN did survive. So it is not the first time that we are facing difficulties. Not even, I would say, not even close. I just think, that's my personal take, that the kind of difficulty we're facing right now, because it's linked with the United States, is a little bit more impressive. But it is not the first time. So we should not be too much influenced by this either. Now, and another thing, let's look a little bit into this negativity. So if I say there's negativity around the UN, everybody knows what I'm talking about. But who is negative? If you look at that, you will realize it's not an alliance of people, it's just people thinking different things for different reasons. UN employees, for example, in New York, where I work, and Mr. Under Secretary General knows very well, are very negative, but that's because of a financial crisis that exists inside the United Nations. The UN did not become inefficient from one day to the other. They live in there, except now they are very negative because they're afraid for their own jobs, they're afraid for the survival of the organization. Public opinion in the world is negative, but public opinion thinks different things. There are one-issue voters out there. They see one war that they care about, and that's very good that they do, and they're negative about the whole United Nations. They think, oh my God, the UN can't stop wars because they care about this one thing. And there are countries that are against the UN, but there it's even more contradictory, because there are countries that are against the UN because they are revisionist powers. Literally, they would like to go to a world where things would be different. And there are countries that are negative about the UN because they are disappointed, especially in the north of Europe, for example. So we have to pay attention to not be negative ourselves and give in to an alliance of differently thinking people and organizations that would end up in some kind of snowball effect against the very organization that we're trying to defend. And especially because some of those who think negatively actually do have an agenda that is against the UN. So we have to be careful about that. So some very simple ideas. First of all, the existence of the UN, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it should be ever discussed unless someone proposes something better. So we should not discuss about, oh, you know, the UN, maybe we don't need it. I don't think that is. I think it should be seen as much as a necessity as any country. My country, Greece, was in great financial trouble in 2015. Unfortunately, everybody has heard about it. No one said, okay, let's abolish Greece. The opposite happened. We came together, a little bit wounded, I must say, afterwards, but we came together and we realized that, okay, it's broken, but we have to come together. So if the UN is not seen as necessary as that, it's not seen as necessary enough. I think it should be as necessary as in its existence as a country. Another thing I hear a lot is, oh, but we will have regional cooperation. But regional cooperation cannot be as good as the UN. It cannot be, because the foundation of that regional cooperation, I was in Cyprus in a forum, The question was, okay, we're going to build IMEC. IMEC is a pipeline that goes from India to Europe, passing from Greece and Israel and Cyprus. And of course, these countries see it as a stabilizing factor, especially against their own opponents in the region, right? You cannot compare that with the foundational prerequisites that existed when the UN was created. You cannot even be close to that, since that very regional cooperation is not in agreement, it doesn't have the agreement of all the regional powers. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that is a completely crazy idea to say regional cooperations, without knowing who and what, will replace the UN somehow. And I was thinking just of something here. I think the UN, the states of the UN and the people a little bit are doing a little bit what we do in the EU. Whoever is in the EU here knows the practice. Whenever something good happens, it's the member state. Whenever something bad happens, it's the EU, right? With the latest example, the von der Leyen-Trump agreement, where they all said, I don't know what she signed. I mean, she went crazy. Of course, that's not how it happens. So with the UN, it's the same. They blame the UN, but the UN is something within which the member states can do the job. The UN can't actually technically be very much blamed for many things, except some cases like, for example, what happened in Haiti. Of course, it was a mistake from the UN. Some things on the ground. But you cannot blame the UN for the international politics not working. That is a contradiction in terms. You cannot actually do it. It's illogical. And then two last ideas. First of all the things that I said, I think because there was a brilliant explanation of the reform of the Security Council. I think if we don't have that unconditional support for the UN will not be able to reform itself. We need to have unconditional support for its existence so that it reforms itself. You cannot have a UN trying to reform and at the same time questioning whether it should exist or not per se. So that's one thing. And the last idea is something I heard some time ago. Should the UN be blamed because international law doesn't work? No. The UN is, for those who lived in countries of the north of Europe, or I think there were coal mines here too. So whenever there was a coal mine, coal mines used to put a little canary in the front. The idea was that in a coal mine, gases that are poisonous but not odorous, you cannot smell them, would gather and everybody would die precisely because you cannot smell the gas. So you cannot smell the threat when it's coming. But the canary would die first. So the canary was placed in front of the coal mine, and then when gases were gathering, workers could get out. The UN is the canary of international law. If the UN died, then it means we're going in the other direction. Because it's almost symbolic. You cannot have a world where the UN would be disregarded and would die completely, knowing that it's the biggest and the largest representative of that system of rule of law in the international scene, and have international law be better respected. It's actually not possible. If you look at international relations history, it's actually almost impossible. So I know professors don't like to predict, but on this one, it seems so evident that I think we should defend the canary. And as long as the UN exists, there is still hope that we can get to a better spot in international relations. So, thank you very much.